All right, this was a fun 3-person conversation centered around how to make big money in life, economics, and aspects of future tech. Lots of topics broken down by two of the smartest people I know, Yash Talreja of Jumpform, Ayush Jaiswal of Pesto Tech. You're not going to get access to these kind of conversations anywhere else. That's the vibe of TRS. That's why we work this hard on this podcast to bring you these kind of beautiful, memorable conversations that are also fun. Remember, for more episodes, follow TRS on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive, which means that every episode is available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is one of the most insightful conversations brought to you by The Ranveer Show. Enjoy yourself. I think it has started. And I think Sanchit is just directing well. So why don't you complete what you were saying about pawn, Mr. Talreja, and then we'll move into talking about advanced finance topics.
What I was saying was that in any new technology, it depends on who adopts it. So when like Blu-ray came out, there was a competitor called HD DVD. Right? And the decision was the gaming industry and the porn industry decided because they are the most volume users of this product. So it plays a role. That's random anecdote.
I want to know more.
I have a question. Who are you guys?
Okay.
I have no idea.
Setting some context here for the listeners. Mr. Jaiswal runs one of India's biggest startup success stories in Pesto Tech. Covered it a lot on this channel, on the Hindi channel. Mr. Yash Talreja and me are killing it in the content game. And just Talreja has been a friend in my life for I don't even know how long. Quickly, what was your first memory of me?
Curly hair, you had chicken pox, came late to school, ran and screaming, "Hi everyone!"
My first memory of you was, that's a smart guy. I'm going to keep him near me and I'm going to learn about money from this guy.
Thank you.
And it happened. He's my smart Sindhi friend. He's already done a Basics of Finance episode on this channel, which did pretty shit when it came out.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the lockdown, something happened to India where people started researching about finance. And I called him one day. I was like, yo, have you seen that video which was stuck at 8,000 views? It's gone to like 2.5 lakh right now. Like in a week. Like what the happened? And that was a case of COVID just fast forwarding behaviors. Now, the course of COVID in the content world has seen a lot of creators sprout up and teach basics about finance. Ki paise ko aise sambhalo. This is what you should think about money, how you should think about money. I specifically wanted to have this conversation for a very long time. You're from the world of startups. You're from the world, I won't say of core finance, but you know how to multiply money. And I love having this advanced finance conversation. Where would you brothers like to start? Why are you all smiling at me? I'm a little creeped out. But where would you brothers like to start?
You were originally excited to talk about economics and finance, but now we're just excited to hear you.
Aww. Go for it. Money talks. How do you multiply? How do you become rich in the 2020s and 2030s according to you?
Beat inflation constantly.
Okay.
Own more equity than cash.
One more. Rapid fire chal raha hai.
Rapid fire, invest in some high growth products with a little bit of your portfolio.
Don't keep money in your savings accounts, man. India has so much money in savings account. You're actually getting poorer, right? Like,
Or even fixed deposits. For the love of God.
yeah.
It earns you less than inflation.
Yes.
Shout out to Ankur Varugu.
Yes. Shout out to Ankur Varugu.
No, shout out to Ankur Varugu for the fixed deposit.
Gosh, yeah. Before you start taking any of this gyan, invest in yourself.
Oh, nice. Have a core skill set.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or like furthering that, try to make some passive income for yourself. Make your life easier.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. And now I also want to learn about econ through the course of this podcast. And what I feel is when you study economics from a global perspective, there are some sort of learnings you can apply to your own financial life. You've studied econ, so you have some deep understanding of this. I would love to know what you have to say, Mr. Tallu.
No, it's just, I don't know, when we talk about money, right? It's like we fixate on this money is such an important part of everyone's lives, the economy. What is money is what you usually start off with in economics. There's this concept called fiat currencies, right? So I take a 10 rupee note. Why is it worth 10 rupees? Because someone considers it worth 10 rupees. We commonly hold the belief that it's worth 10 rupees. But like if you start to look at what that is based on, right? Like then you come into the whole economics category of things. Like money used to be tied to gold. And over time, after the Second World War and all, they didn't tie it to gold. It stopped being tied to gold because the system became so big that it wasn't sustainable.
For example, if I gave you $1, it was a way of saying, actually, I'm giving you so many grams of gold, which are kept in the American Federal Reserve.
Back in the day, it was tied to that value of gold, yes.
And there would actually be physical gold that was stored in the American Federal Reserve. But you're saying post World War II, they stopped tying the value of money to that. Then what did they tie the money of?
The US dollar. Then now we're in the dollar regime of things. And earlier the US dollar used to be tied to gold. But then eventually, after the 70s, there was this amazing thing called stagflation, stagnant growth plus high inflation. After which the US decided gold is not sustainable. And now the dollar is not really back to anything.
Yeah.
So they just said, okay, now dollar is the new gold.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the world runs on the confidence that the US dollar is viable and is worth something.
Imagine how crazy it is. And what if I tell you that banks can print 6 times more money than I think they have in the reserves, if I'm right?
Yeah.
Anytime. So they can multiply the US economy whenever they want. That is a lot of power, right? And they got exposed in the 2008 crash, right? And that is where this concept of Bitcoin was born, which was like, to distribute the power in people's hands.
We'll come back to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I want to right now know from you, Ayush mentioned the 2008 crash.
2008 crash was basically over time, like capital controls were reduced. Banks got more adventurous.
What does that mean?
Like what happens is as an investment bank, right? You have a responsibility to your investors to not make too risky investments also, right? Like you need to provide value.
Well, investment bank, matlab, an organization where I am your client, you are the investment bank, I'll give you my money, you'll say that I will invest it for you and maybe
It's not even just individuals, it's like bade pension funds. How do pension funds pay out pension? They need to beat inflation, they also need to earn money, right? They give their money to an investment bank invests, gives them a return. So these guys basically started investing in riskier products, which was basically products based on mortgages, home loans. And they kind of played their hand because the logic in America used to be that mortgages are infallible. Everyone always pays their mortgage. So who's not going to pay their mortgage? This product is backed and secure. So what they started doing is they made products by collecting a lot of lakhs of people ka home loans, collateralizing it into a product and being like, oh, this is a financial product now. Okay, you can invest in this. They'll obviously pay the mortgage.
When you say collecting lakh of people's home loans, basically loans pe interest bhi tha. And that interest se you gain profits in that product.
Any bank that's giving a loan is earning money off the interest, right? That you're paying them. So if I take 100,000 people ka loans together and I club it together and I be like, this is the total package, this is the total earning. Okay, across all of these, average interest paid is 8%, 7%. That is now a product. So that's what these banks started trading on. And eventually what happened was in this kind of, bull run or rush, this will keep getting better and growing. They started running out of good home loans to make products out of. And eventually they started using not so good home loans to make products.
Good home loans means basically people who are capable of paying the loan and more.
Yes. Or people that are stable enough that you are assured by the rest of their finances, either through some collateral or how much they earn, that they will be able to pay this back.
There were basically credit agencies as well, right?
Yeah.
So tell us more about that, like how...
So it's credit agencies is like a whole problem. But basically what happens is that they became more liberal with who they gave money to and how much money they gave. That's the shortest possible version of it.
मतलब तू भी ले just giving it.
दूसरा घर लेना है, तेरे को तीसरा घर लेना है, you want to buy a 4th house also, like someone's ready to give you a mortgage for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what happened in this. Like there's this movie called The Big Short where these guys are just like flabbergasted going to people and being like, oh, you own 4 houses, how do you afford this? And they said, loan pe liya.
It's like basically in a stack of cash, if you mix couple of duplicate ones, people won't notice that. That's exactly what was happening. In a set of good loans, they were mixing riskier loans and then they would get distributed.
The logic was, okay, suppose now there's a 5% chance that you will not be able to pay your mortgage, right? But if I take 100 people like this together with a 5% chance each, okay, then that number reduces now, because what is the chance that 100 people will not be able to pay? So based on that logic, they made these products. But what happened is over time, they started putting not so good loans inside these boxes as well.
To be able to go to the customers and say, see, we're going in such safe.
Yeah, to be able to trade on this.
Yeah.
Being like, this is a secure product, iske basis pe we'll trade.
And the fault here was of whom?
The fault was pretty much regulations were like...
Or banks.
Banks is the thing, like the big banks, because eventually they got bailed out, which was the whole thing. That earlier, money was based on the strength of the US dollar. But what they do is, how much US dollar can be put into the market also is controlled.
Yeah.
right? Like there's a set amount. Like money today is like debt. Okay, like a central bank creates debt to give to banks who give it out to do business. And you see, एक debt मैंने इसको दिया, वो आगे उसने loan किया. Like it based on that, a whole system of this debt-based finance is created. Banks overplayed their hand, like took bets that they should not have, and they ended up at a position where they couldn't like pay. And the government, the US government, in like a landmark decision at the time, what they decided to do to fix this was to print more money and bail out the banks.
Yeah. So and they still hold the power, right?
They still hold the power. Now in COVID, we've seen like a large percentage of the total currency globally in circulation is actually been printed recently.
One second, I want to talk about what's happening now also. I want to dial back a little bit. What did it mean for the average investor? Like what did it mean for people like us, you know? The 2008 crash, because we were 14, 12 at the time. You know, what was happening in the adult world?
So imagine like a game of parsing the parcel, okay? And at some point the parcel explodes and then one person is left with this broken parcel. Now the whole chain breaks then, right? Now if these big banks are unable to pay back their debts, that it cascades across the whole system. So you had like, you know, liquidity issues, banks being able to pay back, of like, you know, banks not having the confidence to lend anymore. Okay, and for the economy to grow, because already you had this one kind of like bust scenario, right? So that's what happened. That's why there was a slump, because all the liquidity got taken out of the system, because like one person doesn't pay in the chain, the whole chain dries up.
It's like a food chain. You
Kind of,
remove something.
Yeah. You remove like a huge like, you know, amount of value from this system, so system won't work the same way, right?
Wow. And so basically the stock markets crashed because of this, because
bank performance, like Bear Stearns, which was one of the biggest banks in the world at that time, went bankrupt, right? So like it's things like this. The confidence in the banking system also went, where people weren't sure what are these banks investing in. We thought it was secure, right? If they have to be bailed out by the government for making risky bets, that removed the confidence in the system also, right, of people.
Imagine you not feeling safe that my money in my account right now is not safe.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine that. So
I
think
that's the worst scenario, right? They call it a bank run, where you don't have confidence that the bank will be able to, you know, like retain the value of your money. So everyone tries to go and get their money out of the bank. But what happens then? Like, you know, how will the bank do business?
what's the ratio? Like the total like economy size and versus like the amount of cash in the bank? What's the ratio? Like, do we have? Because of course, like if everybody takes money out,
it's called in economics, it's called the multiplier effect.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a small amount of debt that's created from the central bank. It kind of like, you know, that's the multiplier, right? Because you're taking this debt and you're doing business with it.
Yes.
So from what I understand, the RBI has ratios for, it's called the,
Got it. But whatever that ratio is, but basically like the debt is issued.
Yeah, repo and reverse repo rates.
Yeah. So whatever amount of money, let's say the banks have, the money which they actually have, they can lend 5-6 times more money in the market. So if everybody just starts taking their money back, you know, banks don't have money anymore.
No, and when the entire system is based on debt, then the whole, it's like the system is by itself inflationary only, right?
Exactly.
Because there's a multiplier, because it's based on this debt that you're paying again to create more business.
Yes.
So a lot of institutions, a lot of banks, a lot of people lost money in the 2008 crash. Long story short.
Yes.
But what are the long-term implications of it? Was it the birth of DeFi? Was it the birth of cryptocurrencies?
I mean, cryptocurrencies is the start of DeFi, right? Like, and that's the whole thing. When your system's based on debt and it's not based on a tangible thing, then you start to think, okay, if this as existing system also isn't based on tangible stuff, then why am I beholden to it?
Yeah.
Like, I'll just make a digital currency that's not tied to anything.
Basically, people realized that money which is there in your bank account is just a number against your name, right? It's not tied to anything, right? Which means it's just thin air, right? And the power is in the hands of very limited number of people, which are the banks, right? So Bitcoin was created with like, you know, by an anonymous person, Satoshi Nakamoto, and what that is basically distributing this power, right? Like when you talk about Bitcoin, you know, sort of, and the technology behind it, which is blockchain, a lot of things come up, right? How it works, so on and so forth. But the core fundamental reason is, or why it happened, is to distribute the power which is there in hands of these banks to the rest of the people, right?
Too many questions about Bitcoin. We've covered the basics on a fantastic crypto podcast with Sumit Gupta of CoinDCX. Ayush, I gotta ask you, when it comes to Bitcoin, because you're sitting in Silicon Valley, I'm sure you have perspective. You have a different kind of perspective as compared to the rest of the world, all the listeners. how did Bitcoin get its first 10 to 100 users? Because there had to be some sort of, like, what's your gut feeling? Because, I mean, see, there could have been other cryptocurrencies. Why has this cryptocurrency taken off? See, Ethereum, it's taken off because of the underlying tech. That you can build further tech products using the Ethereum network. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
What about Bitcoin? How did it get its first 10 to 100?
So in the beginning, you definitely need early adopters. It had early adopters who understood why this matters, right? They saw the vision, they believed in it.
Is it first mover's advantage for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a company. Right? It's just something which was out there lying around, and people were like, "Hey, this sounds interesting." Bitcoin was used on multiple gaming platforms as a way to use the currency, and people loved it because it would cost less. And
Had you bought some then, Mr. Jaiswal?
No, I do want to sound very smart.
Okay. I thought you're one of those early tech guys who were like, yeah, I'll take some Bitcoin, and then you're suddenly like exploding with like
Back in
cash.
the day in 2013, I remember it was like $7, $8 when people were picking it up for the heck of it in college.
Yeah.
I think people need to understand the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and this is where I kind of lose some of my cryptocurrency arguments with friends who are not believers in crypto, and there's a lot of them. Especially older guys, and by older I mean 4-5 years older than us. For some reason. They say that, okay, Ethereum, I get that there is an underlying technology. So for those of you who don't have context, basically imagine that older softwares, including the ones you use on your phone, were created using raw material A, which is the older sort of technology. And the newer apps which are going to be built, which are called built on Web3 protocols or built on the blockchain, will be built using a new sort of raw material. Now, one of those highly effective raw materials is the Ethereum network. And for someone to create a software using that highly effective raw material, which is the Ethereum network, they need to buy Ethereum tokens to be able to code on that, on those protocols. That is the value of Ethereum. As people figure out more ideas, I can build this using Ethereum networks and that using Ethereum. Ethereum's value keeps going up. Now, this has a very solid use case, which is why people say, I believe more in Ethereum than I believe in Bitcoin. What is the underlying tech behind Bitcoin? I lose the argument.
I'll just simplify it in a very, very simple way, right? Bitcoin was just this distributing power to people, right? Ethereum is programmable money, which means unlimited potential. You can play with it. You can build stuff on top of it, right? And a couple of things which, sort of emerged in the last few years. One is DeFi, which is more into lending, that how can you, sort of bring the lending industry using DeFi, and then there is NFTs, which is, sort of non-fungible tokens and stuff like that. So I think, and these are just two applications. So Ethereum is more of like an, sort of programmable money, which you can play around with. And the potential is unlimited. That's why people are more excited about Ethereum, right? The second thing is, when there are more applications built on top of Ethereum, blockchain is basically like, sort of look at it as backend, right? If you build something on top of it, you need to interact with it. When you interact with it, you need to pay, just like you pay servers today, right? You pay to like AWS or some centralized place. But if you are building on top of Ethereum, you need to pay the network, right? And that
think of it like a very big oil reserve, and you're paying the country in which the oil reserve exists.
Even if you make an NFT, you pay a gas fee.
Exactly. So gas fee is basically doing that work, right? Somebody has got to be paid to do anything, right? So I think that's how you are interacting with the network, right? Now, why Ethereum's value goes up? Because of two reasons. One is that the applications are increasing. More and more people are lending. More and more people are borrowing. NFTs are taking off, right? All of those stuff is happening, right? So because of that, the demand is increased. And if you have anything which is limited, the price will shoot up. The second thing which is happening, Ethereum is about to go through an upgrade. And in that upgrade, Ethereum is already, by the way, deflationary, sort of, which means that the amount of supply which is there in the system is actually decreasing. So you have increase in demand plus decrease in supply of Ethereum, ETH, which is like the token which is used, right? So because of both these reasons, the price of each ETH is increasing, right? To be
What
more
it
specific.
effectively means for retail investors is that this isn't financial advice. This is the advice I got from cryptocurrency experts. And Ayush is indirectly saying that money is expected to increase if you invest your money in Ethereum
Oh,
tokens.
yeah. So I wouldn't like, again, it's not a financial advice.
Yeah, it's not financial advice.
But I'm saying that anything, when its adoption is increased, and supply is decreased, the value has to go up, right? And that's like, we are not sort of...
No, this isn't recommendations.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Not a recommendation.
Let me make that clear. But the crypto experts did recommend that these are the two tokens that you invest in. And I get why you invest in Ethereum tokens, ETHs. What is the logic behind investing in Bitcoin? Is it that there's already a community built out which believes that much in it? Companies, governments are accepting Bitcoin, which is validating its value?
Yeah. So governments are not. So I mean, like, it's
El Salvador.
two different things, So El Salvador decided to use Bitcoin as their reserves. Like earlier, we used to use gold as reserves. They decided that Bitcoin is the future. The government of Miami, they are buying Bitcoin, and they are, even rewarding their citizens. They are trying to gamify sort of, life, yeah, and basically incentivize good behavior, right? And stuff like that. So I think there are some governments playing around with it, but it's just very less in number. So
when you go to a deeper psychological level,
yeah,
what even makes human beings value gold? People just decided that this is rare.
Exactly.
It's shiny, it's yellow.
Yes.
And it's worth some money.
Yes.
It's a common shared belief.
Supply and demand, right? If there are sneakers, right? Nike launches sneakers tomorrow and says that, hey, come buy these sneakers. I'm making these, right? The price of those sneakers might not be too high. But if Nike says, these are sneakers, I'll only make 1,000 of these. They're exclusive, they're limited in supply, then the demand for those sneakers will increase because people would want it to show off, or for whatever reason, right?
Artificial scarcity. basically.
Artificial scarcity, yeah, correct.
So again, I feel like when it comes to money or anything valuable, diamonds, gold, platinum, whatever, you name it, it's a common shared belief between a bunch of human beings. As for the case with diamonds and gold, it's the world's population. With Bitcoin, it's a section of the world's population that said that is our new gold. How does it look? I'm not so sure.
See, it's like barter system could only take human beings so far. So we developed a intermediary to exchange stuff with each other, right? And then since then, it's the same thing. Like earlier, that intermediary was a physical product.
Absolutely.
Like then it was paper, which we could print. That was tied to a physical product. Then it was, let's just base it on the strongest currency in the world. That will never fail. And now it's like, since we've gone this far, we now accept that it's a shared belief that makes money work. Why not make a electronic and efficient kind of money that we can program, we can put laws into, and that's the whole logic.
There's this beautiful book called The Wealth of Nations.
Oh yeah, of course.
Talks about history, like, sort of mankind. How did this whole thing come up? There were kings. They would like say silver is the new currency. Then they would put their pictures on it. Then that king dies, somebody killed him. And from tomorrow, the other picture is the currency. We went through all of those things. And I think this is just an evolutionary phase. And I forgot to mention that. And I want to give credit to Packy for this definition. I think it's Packy, but I might be quoting him wrong. But I think he said Ethereum is the new supercomputer, and ETH is the money which will govern that, right? So that's another way to think about it.
So again, coming back to those older bros who go, those guys who are against crypto, specifically when it comes to Bitcoin, they say that I don't have scientific proof that this is actually valuable. And they're saying I don't have numbers behind it, because who's controlling the rates that go up and down? It can be controlled by anyone. And somewhere the argument would have been valid in 2013. But the situation now is that there's that many people who are like backing it.
Yeah.
And also it's like absolute versus relative worth, right? You have any currency today, the Indian rupee, for example, is worth relative to something. No?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always worth, like everything is pegged to $1. It's an exchange rate. It's a whatever. So
which is why I kind of think that a lot of people will now kind of evolutionarily have to just accept crypto.
No, and as we begin to accept that things that exist in digital systems are real, and that are actually usable in our life, it starts to extend to different things, right?
And by the way, I'm like a big I definitely love the technology and I believe in it. But just saying that when adoption happens, then value creation happens, right?
Right.
So adoption is the key here, not, not speculation, nothing else. Adoption of the technology, right? Second point, that why Bitcoin has any value, right? There's like a fun news which came up, I guess, a few days ago, which mentions a lady sold $37,000 worth of fart in UK. She ended up in a hospital because she was trying to make too much money. But she started doing this online, and this is like,
You remember
what is
that
this?
ex-girlfriend I told you about? Never mind. Go on.
But news like this, like people are buying NFTs, right? And who gave NFTs any value?
Yeah.
It's it's the market. When the market comes together to decide that NFT has X value, it has X value. Same as with the stock market. Who decides that a company is worth X?
Same as with abstract art. Anything
Absolutely, exactly. Yeah. So it's really the market that decides.
It's all of us agree on that certain things matter, certain things have value, you can do certain things, you can't do certain things. And then it all stems from there.
Moving on to lighter topics, lads. Because this podcast got heavy. So, of course, we got to bring back that bakchosgiri. But because the theme is paisa, question straight up for you, Mr. Talreja. You're the paisa expert in the house, honestly, here.
Okay.
Are you feeling the pressure?
A little bit, yeah.
The paisa expert, I have a direct question. I think the first podcast we did was about the basics of how you should look at money. The second one we did was about real estate in specific. Keeping both those two things in mind, what's happened over the course of the last 2 years, specific to Indians, in terms of what should we keep in mind now when it comes to money? Indian kids are getting deeply educated about stock market in general, about even private equity, about real estate investments because of podcasts like ours. So that was not me doing some mental masturbation. That was not me sucking on my own. Mr. Talreja, please. You can suck on yours.
Okay, let's get back to it.
I don't know these guys.
Go on.
I think it's been a year of financial inclusion. Everyone has woken up in India. There have been more than 1 crore accounts opened because now everyone had time. Everyone realized this thing was drilled into everyone's heads that like, you can't just let it sit idle. Like, you got to do something, man. Like inflation's taking your money away. What are you doing? So now it's a time of financial inclusion. It's a time of crazy increased participation in markets. So people are getting into it, which is good, but also that means that there's like, a bull run in the market because so many people are entering. And in these times, you have to be careful about like what you put money in because now all these people have come in. Tomorrow the market starts dropping if these people leave.
What can make them leave? If they get bored of that habit of being in the stock market?
See, so much of markets is mass psychology and confidence in what you're investing in, right?
Herd mentality.
Not herd mentality. It's more like if I believe that the country is doing well, companies are growing, the situation globally is stable.
Got it.
Right? Like, okay, recently, based on geopolitical stuff, so many times, we see markets crash. If one market crashes in another country, it affects confidence levels somewhere else. So you have to understand that, okay, you have come in at a time where there is mass participation, but a lot of these things are reacting to the world also. Like, it's not just driven by the fundamentals of company A or whatever technical analysis you've done. Like, it's a connected, bigger ecosystem.
Also, when there is too much demand, you tend to overvalue something.
Yeah.
So
I feel it's way too many narratives that come together and therefore affect the stock price or the market in general.
Yeah. See, the real world is a mess. Like, there's no getting away from that sometimes because there's just too many variables. You can't account for all of them.
So, where are we now, man?
I think we're in a place where people are... Now we've reached the part of inclusion. Everyone's joined in this ecosystem. And now we're trying to see where this ecosystem can go. Hence DeFi, hence all these new ways of, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, new way of organizing the back end of all of these systems.
Let's talk DeFi. Mr. Jaiswal, what is DeFi?
in very simple language, you make money by lending money to someone. You get paid interest on it. DeFi is just that. You're removing the middleman, getting the borrower and lender together and helping that transaction happen. Yeah.
DeFi शब्द को expand कीजिए जैसे.
Oh, DeFi is decentralized finance, जिसमें कोई बीच का बंदा नहीं है. ये decentralized finance है. जो platform है, वो mediator है. just pay, there are borrowers and lenders coming and they're basically doing the transaction.
You, from your eyes of being an econ student, how does this look?
This looks insane, amazing, because you're making the system transparent, right?
Yeah.
So something like microfinance is a great example of what he was talking about, right? Like if microfinance, small loans given out to people, if it's organized, automated through a blockchain-based system, I can give money on loan to someone else and the system will ensure that it's going to the right place, coming back on time and all of that. Or like there's tokenization for real estate nowadays.
Yeah.
Smart contracts. Like I don't want to sit and deal with all these papers. The registry of properties in blockchain, right? So the record gets updated because of that.
What does this mean for, say, a student in his final year who's figuring out finances in life? What does that person need to know about DeFi? And what do they need to study like right now?
Got it. So DeFi is basically like removing the middlemen, right? Which are more often than not banks, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a person who is just graduating, I would want to study the newer technologies which are coming in because they might be the future. In college, you will learn about what are the infrastructures available today, but what's coming in tomorrow is going to be very, very critical. I'll give you an example, right? A very good friend of mine, Raphael, is one of the smartest guys I know. He's working on this company called TrueFi, right? And what TrueFi is trying to do, I hope I explain this right, otherwise I don't want to disappoint him. But what TrueFi does is that they're basically building a centralized place where they will have credit scores of everybody. Today we have, for example, in India, you use CIBIL score, right? Similarly, on the blockchain, people are borrowing and they are, lending money. Based on how good you are in paying back, they're creating a credit score, which is accessible by all the other apps, not just lending, all the other apps. So basically, everyone's credit is getting created on a blockchain which can be shared by everyone, which is very, very powerful, right?
But will they have names like Yash Talreja credit so much, Ranveer credit so much?
Yeah, so I think like identities in sort of in the crypto world is like a sort of whole different topic. So right now they don't have names; they have wallet addresses, right?
Got it.
So you can put a name to it. You can sort of stay anonymous. So that's how it works.
It's basically publicly ranking you based on how good you are at the game of money.
Absolute. I mean, how reliable you are. What is credit based on? Essentially, it's based on your behavior in history, right? You build up a credit score based on that.
I have an analogy, but I don't know how like appropriate it is. But basically, torrents, right?
Yeah.
So torrents is like P2P kind of thing, right? I like, someone uploads a file, they seed it to 10 people, they seed it again, and you have a ratio ki maine itna download kiya and I've like uploaded so much.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar to that. Think of it like P2P lending for decentralized finance kind of, okay?
Yeah.
Like I am lending to someone else, there's no intermediary because the system is automated. So it's kept track ki maine itna diya, I've got so much interest and all of that is meant.
And nothing over there can ever get lost because all that data is on the blockchain.
Is the value of that startup in the data? When people say data is the new oil, therefore that startup has created this bank of data.
Yeah.
But then how is this startup, Raphael's startup, making money in terms of just by holding data? Because you said that the data is publicly available to everyone else. So how do they make money themselves?
So of course there are multiple ways. Like there are platforms who charge like a fee by themselves, which is of course like not as sort of high or stuff like that. So there are multiple ways through which these platforms make money for facilitating this, right? They get rewarded.
Like you said, data is oil. Recently I spoke to someone who had made an AI for real estate, right? And the major collection, like this company called Anarok, they're one of India's largest residential sales marketing companies. So we spoke to Mr. Sunil Mishra, who built their AI. And it basically what he was talking about is that the first process was collecting consumer and lead data for so many years to build that database. And why that database was valuable is that when they started writing these algorithms to decide which leads are good and all of that, they could train it on this data. And they had all this data to work off of, right? So they had to make the database, and why that database was valuable is it trained their algorithm. And now they can say which lead is good. He's Mr. Salesperson, concentrate on this guy, he has a good chance of buying.
Got it.
Another great product, CRED. They said we will serve top 1% of, Indian economy, right? Those are our customers. and they said this is an app to play credit card bills. So when you pay credit card bills on CRED, guess what do they have?
Your data.
Yeah, how credible you are. And when they have that, they can build like 10,000 projects on top of it. They can start lending you. They can start, multiple other things.
I believe Kunal Shah said this publicly. He said that we're creating a community of highly reliable people,
Yes.
and that is the actual product.
Yeah.
So kal jaake they can turn CRED into anything if they have retained users and
Exactly,
data on those retained users. They can say, oh, we're e-commerce for like luxury products.
Yes.
And instead of going to your local fancy mall and buying it, why don't you buy it off CRED?
Exactly.
So once you have data, you get to mold your business in any form that you wish. Coming back to DeFi, when we're saying decentralized finance and when we're saying, okay, banks might get redundant. So could you give me sort of an actual product picture of what a DeFi application would be in order to replace banks? Like if I say, okay, I don't want to work with the existing banks right now. I want to do my banking on a DeFi based product. What would that look like? Like what does that include? Or does it already exist?
Yeah, it definitely does. So basically banks make money by lending, right? And that's like a big portion of how banks make money. On DeFi platforms, you can just go, you can start lending there. And borrowers will pay you based on whatever credibility they have, and if there are losses, it basically gets distributed amongst all the lenders, so there is lesser risk and stuff like that, right? Another thing which is making money off money, right? So this concept of staking on the DeFi platform. Staking is nothing but validating transactions, right? So you can, if let's say I have X amount of ETH, I can go on DeFi platforms and I can stake those ETHs, and I'll get certain interest rate on my ETH, right? And all that money is doing is acting as a validator on different transactions, and I'm making my interest, right? So I think, and also just a big thing which I think a lot of people, who are like Web2 people who sort of don't believe in Web3, or I get both the sides. Blockchain does not necessarily make everything more efficient, right? Decentralization is highly inefficient, right? You need centralization in a lot of things. I agree. But one of the things which people often miss is that this has no end. People can keep building on top of it, right? So what it's going to look like 5 years later, nobody knows. Yeah. People will keep trying things and they'll keep trying to make sense. And
what do you mean this has no end versus a system which has an end in terms of what? Like the systems we see in the world right now, like the banks, there's a limit to their capabilities. So you're saying that these decentralized systems, you can be creative and come up with new solutions for problems.
Exactly. And you can also be creative in a centralized way, but the power also gets centralized, right? So all I'm saying is that the inefficiencies exist in the system, but those inefficiencies won't stay forever. So it's not a fair comparison to compare the existing system to this system, because this system is just 5 years old. Existing systems, decades, right?
And even for money, the existing system's like a pyramid, right? Like you keep going up in the pyramid. Even banks get their money from a central bank.
Yeah.
Right? Central banks deal with each other. It's based on that. So it like eventually it comes down to just these reserves and banks like at the top of this system. And therefore it's centralized because they are the ones controlling the supply and printing of money. So here, now the system is opened up to anyone who can take it where, again, like that's we don't know.
Like, for example, if I have to ask you that, Ranveer's life is going to be controlled by this one power, would you prefer that one power to be that one person who says, you'll have to do whatever I say? Or would you prefer that one power to be thousands of people and you'll say that, okay, whatever the community says, I'll do, because a few people might be corrupt, but corrupting thousands is harder, right? So I think that's the fundamental difference here.
So I actually want to cut away and bring back some lightness. I want to say that the listeners really need to go and check out the Hindi conversation we did. We spoke a lot about future tech for some reason in that podcast. Usually our Hindi podcasts are about cultural stories, history, things like that. So I'm glad that flavor entered that particular podcast. Check out TRS clips because the podcasts are honestly going to get a little heavier, and I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea to consume something like this in one go unless you're a brainiac like this man sitting next to me, Mr. Talreja. We spoke about the present of money. Both you gents, please talk about the future of money. As in, DeFi is one aspect of it. What else is going to happen?
So something which is really exciting, which I'm like most excited about in this space, is DAOs, which are decentralized organizations, right? Which basically says that right now, so first we talked about decentralizing power of, for money, which was Bitcoin. But now you're saying that, hey, some of the biggest tech companies in the world are just getting bigger and bigger, right? Because they have all the data and they're making money off you. You are the product. You're spending a ton of time on using these apps, and these apps have data on you, and they're using that data to make money by selling it to advertisers, right? So essentially, they're making money off your time, right? And off your data. So decentralized organizations came up with this concept, or it is the concept that companies should be built and the power should not be concentrated to, a few people. It needs to be distributed to the community. So first of all, in Web3, it's Web2 plus ownership, right? If you're using something, you can own a part of it, right? Decentralized organizations are basically not a few people owning a company. Like right now, we know that companies, founders, investors, etc., control majority. Decentralized organizations, community controls most of it, and community is its users, and community has ownership. So if that DAO does well, then its users get rewarded.
How does a DAO do well or badly? They create a product together,
Exactly.
sell the product or sell the service.
Absolutely. If let's say Instagram was a DAO and you have to make a decision that, hey, we want to launch Reels, right? So they'll create a recommendation that we want to launch Reels and the community votes for it. And since the community is the users themselves, then they can probably vote for the best thing because they would know what they want. And if they succeed, they will also get rewarded, right? If the company grows, then the value of, whatever they hold, tokens, etc., its value increases as well.
Okay, with any centralized organization, like you talk about like you spoke about Instagram, right? It's a platform. The platform has the control in the end, right?
Yes.
This is power to the people, right? The platform is like everyone has a stake in the platform. So then the platform is everyone's, right? So imagine you have a content platform where there's no middleman. You make the content, the community votes on the guidelines of the organization, and the distribute, like the proceeds and the costs are borne split by the community.
Like a couple of companies, let's say you're a creator, right? Then you're depending on 4 or 5 platforms, right? Those platforms are controlled by a few companies, right? And you have no say in it. So they can change stuff which can affect lives of all the creators
And the users.
right? And that is just
A great example is introducing Reels, pumping it through the algorithm, and therefore, culturally, everyone's attention spans are reducing.
exactly. Yes.
So you're saying that what I anticipate is, again, speaking purely from the world of social media, getting to see how people evolve, attention spans have reduced. We're going to hit a point where people go like, what the f***, I want my attention span back. And then go into this DAO-based product and service. And there's going to be some sort of massive evolution in the world of social media as well.
Even the idea that going one step back, that there's an algorithm that curates what you see.
Yes.
That also is something that like a DAO is like, it takes away from all of these problems.
And you own your data, right? You can have ownership of it, right? Like it's...
No, got it. What are your hot takes on where social media is going?
I personally feel like DAOs. Like all the science fiction I read, okay, it's there's a shift towards the collective based on technology. That's the theme I see broadly. So whether it's like, like think of a large LLP, like a 100% startup, where everyone who buys in, joins the company gets like a little equity. So you'll all own the company. You'll all own the platform. So I think technology is going to be an enabler to let people have a stake in what they do. Instead of like rent seeking, where you have to give a cut to a middleman or like a platform or whatever.
I think I'm more on the side of communities. I think community is the new real estate. And as we go along, people are going to need that sense of belongingness because they'll be working remote and whatnot. And they will find that sense of belongingness or their tribe in a community. And it is going to be more and more community-oriented rather than just broadly open.
I thought we're doing a lighter version. This is probably the heaviest.
As much as we try, we gravitate towards this somehow. I don't know why.
How was the Hindi one getting light constantly? I think it's that whole logic about your personality changes in different languages, and all three of us are these gents in English, and in Hindi, our come out a little bit. So, boys, tell me about your sex lives.
Oh, okay, we're going straight there. Full left turn.
No, I'm kidding. This is the end of the show. Thank you for listening. Wait, you all want to add something? Money, paisa, kuch bolna hai? Okay, anything, people listening want to get rich, any recommendations? We'll do that. Hey, Ayush, hey, Yash, chalo, fast recommendations. Yash, recommendation to become rich.
Read about new technology because within a few years, we'll actually be able to invest in it.
Okay.
I was about to say read, but
Travel?
travel a lot. I think that
perspective?
gives you new perspectives and lots of new learnings. Yeah.
हो गया hot takes आज का.
Come on, Yash. Come on, man. You can do it.
I don't have any hot takes left to give, man.
Okay, fine.
I think
fair.
just investing in yourself, being a builder, being out there, learning constantly, and focusing more on consistency rather than one big event in which life is going to change. That's not going to happen. If you just spend like 1 hour on something in a direction where you want to move, I think that can change your life. So be a builder and do something, right? Like be curious, and when you keep building something and keep failing, I think that is the biggest thing. Most people, fail more. I think like maximum number of projects fail because they don't even get started. So start those projects, right? Failures are going to teach you, and you'll start new projects. So.
Okay. Maybe I'll take the signing off note. The signing off note is that this has been a learning of the last year working with Harshal Karya on level specifically. Hard work is important, but making big money in life is not just about how hard you work. It's about who you work with, and it's about what you work on. That's how massive money is made in life. So choose your inner tribe like very carefully. Understand the best possible product or service you can build, and then work hard. But don't just grind out in like a job you don't enjoy, in a career you don't enjoy, out of that thing of I'm gonna keep working. That's not a life worth living, man. You gotta chase happiness. And Talreja being next to me always gives me that amount of happiness. Mr. Jaiswal, thank you for being on this slightly buck finance special. Thank you guys. I just hope that you all are showered with juices from your dreams. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
If you enjoyed that conversation, you've got to check out the Hindi podcast that we did in the same setting with Yash and Ayush. Some incredible breakdowns of specifically future tech. I think this one also had lots of elements about money and economics. That one was specifically catered to the engineers. We're trying to bring you very varied content across both the Hindi and the English podcasts. So make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. We're Spotify exclusive, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. That's right. TRS bringing you the best content in the world. We'll see you soon. Enjoy, like, share, subscribe.